So good evening and welcome to our 11th edition of Webster Speaks Dialogues on Race, Equity, and Inclusion. I'm your moderator, Earl McCoy Jr., Regional Recruitment Coordinator here at Webster University. Tonight's topic, experts who are leading workplace diversity. You can ask our panel's questions on Twitter using the hashtag Webster Speaks or send me an email at EARLMCCOY24@webster.edu, and we'll get to as many comments and questions during the live conversation as we can. So now here's our host, Webster University's Chief Diversity Officer, Vincent C. Flewellen.
Thank you, Earl. Before we start tonight's conversation, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for joining us tonight. Additionally, I want to thank those of you who have supported our DEI efforts through your donations during your registration process. So now onto the show. If you have a job or if you're looking for one, tonight's show is for you. We're talking about promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, in the workplace. It's what I do here at Webster University and what tonight's panelists do at their organizations. But what does it mean to actually achieve equity? And what are DEI leaders faced with today? We'll explore that tonight. Joining us in alphabetical order are Angela Cody. She is the Director of Inclusion and Diversity at Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals and the Diversity Leader of the St. Louis Diversity and Inclusion Consortium. She has also developed, designed, and facilitated courses for DEI leaders across the nation and has been named by Mogul as one of the top 100 innovators for diversity and inclusion. Angie has also received the Diverse Business Leaders Award from the St. Louis Business Journal. Welcome. Desiree Coleman. Desiree advances equity and empowers women through speaking, writing, and consulting. Her superpower is helping organizations redefine and reimagine their diversity, equity, and inclusion practices. She uses her experience to coach, mentor, and invest in women leaders. Through the online community she founded, Queen Within, she curates women's wellness and empowerment events. Desiree is also the recipient of the 2019 Rising Star Award from Investment News. Clinton Normore. Clinton is Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion at A.T. Still University in Mesa, Arizona. Under his leadership, it is the first graduate health sciences education university to earn a prestigious award, the Insight into Diversity's Higher Education Excellence in Diversity Award. And it is the first to do so in consecutive years. Clinton is a trained civil rights investigator and certified campus security authority. He was a National Institute on Minority Health Disparities Scholar in 2015. Valerie Patton. Valerie is Senior Vice President of Economic Inclusion and Executive Director of the St. Louis Business Diversity Initiative. She develops strategies, solutions, and programs for organizations in the St. Louis region in the area of workforce diversity and inclusion. She is also the founder of the Initiative Fellows Program, a leadership development experience, and Gateway Connections, a welcoming orientation for professionals of color. Welcome to you all. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
It was a lot to read. You all are one illustrious group. I'm so glad to have you. Yes, for sure. So I'm curious to know, obviously, what prompted each of you all to get into this line of work, and what was it that inspired you? And let's start with you, Desiree.
Thank you, Vincent. And, just want to say thank you for doing this. It's a give back to our community, our region, to facilitate these conversations. So it's an honor to be here. I would say for me, as a child, I always knew I wanted to help people. And so I just slowly began whittling down the list, I knew I didn't want to be a teacher. I didn't want to be a social worker. Went to school at Mizzou, studied business, and decided I didn't want to work in a traditional sense. So I went to grad school, got my master's, and landed in DC. So I worked in policy and government for first 10 years of my career. I loved it. So there's always been this thread of helping people. When I moved back to St. Louis, landed at United Way, and, you know, got to know great folks like Miss Val. And then I went over to Wells Fargo to run community relations. Again, that thread of helping people. So after doing that for 5 years, this opportunity presented itself. And I really see it as an extension of their work. It's a macro opportunity to make conditions better for diverse folks of all backgrounds and to really level the playing field. So it really gives me passion to do this work every day.
And it shows, it really does. And so I'm glad again that you're here on the show. Thank you very much.
All right, I'll go. And I echo Desiree's. Thank you so much for having us today. This is it's such a privilege to be here and an honor. So how I got into this work. I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17 years old. I waited until that 17th birthday. I was like, you need to sign these papers, and I'm ready to go. And it did not take long. It took about 6 months for me to figure out that I was gay and that I could not. I realized I was in a place where I had to hide that for the remainder of my time in the Marine Corps, and it was so stifling to everything, to every aspect of my life. I felt like I wasn't accomplishing what I knew that I could. I felt just restricted in relationships and in my ability to really be able to perform what I knew I could do. After a hard decision of like, I had to make a decision, you know, I can be who I am or I could be a Marine. And so eventually I made my way out after my tour, I made my way out of the Marine Corps and fell into an organization that I had to hide it again. And so after 6 years of that, and again, like not being able to really show up every day, I ended up at Mallinckrodt, and I came in wearing my pride flag. I came in with it draped around like a little cape, and I'm like, I am, this is who I am, this is how you're going to hire me, and this is how I'm going to show up every day. About a year into my time at the organization, they approached me and said, hey, we're going to start up this diversity and inclusion initiative, and we want you to lead the LGBTQ group. And I laughed, and I was like, no way. I'm not going to be your poster child sitting out there and be, you know, this thing. Like, you're not going to do that to me. And I thought about it for a whole hour maybe. And I'm like, this is my opportunity to make change and to influence an organization of this size and magnitude and be able to make things just a little bit better for the next person. And after I got into the project and into the role, I found myself then really getting into the broader work of diversity and inclusion. And then the rest is history. It was but it was just that I would never, you know, my goal and my intent is to never have anyone ever feel the way that I felt in that moment. And I could, you know, I was, you know, fortunate enough to be able to, you know, cover that piece. But what that covering and what that did was actually, you know, was just repressing all the other beautiful things that I had to offer. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I got into the work. Thank you, Vincent.
Thank you. Valerie, let's go with you next.
Well, to whom much is given, much is required. Luke 12:48. And I honestly must say, I probably came out of the womb doing this work, in the fact that my vein for social justice, doing the right thing, treating people as you wanted to be treated, actually started, you know, decades and years before I was born. And I would say that my maternal grandfather, who worked in a non-OSHA paint factory in Miami, Florida, taught the men to sign their names and to read the paper. So it's in my DNA. I was the kid that would come home from school without something, be it lunch boxes, be it tennis shoes, because in my era, you had 3 pairs of shoes. You had gym shoes, school shoes, and Sunday shoes. So I always would come home without tennis shoes at any point in time. But really began to see and ingrain the work going to high school. Yes, I am a native St. Louisan. I will not out the school district right now, but I was in the second class of African Americans to integrate this high school. And that's when I really began to see systematic racism at its worst. So not only was I one of 3 Black students in the honors program. So what they did, they divided us 3 sections of honors, 1 in each section. So we could not even, collaborate or commiserate, either one. Then I also did not grow up in the district. So I transferred into the district. So really some pretty mean things said. Actually, I was writing some things the other day and remember being in algebra, advanced algebra, and a fight broke out in the front of the room and the teacher sent all the Black kids to the office. I was in the back of the room looking out the window and I was like, everybody went to the office. Everybody got put out. And then, your parents had to come and defend getting you back in. So just a really rich history. Then I went into corporate and really have always been, I think about an employee that was on my team who was being bullied and harassed by another employee that was white. And what we did to make sure that case really got the visibility that it needed to be. So I've always been a champion for justice, a champion for change, making sure that everybody has access to everything that everybody else has access to. So the work for me currently, multicultural leadership development, inclusive business solutions, all of that is around how do we help people, 1, have access to what everybody else has access to, and 2, getting people to really realize their strengths and really getting them to use those strengths to help others. And it's just the passion for the work at the end of the day for me. I love what I do. I shouldn't say this publicly, but if I didn't get paid, I would still do it because I have that conviction. And especially having parents with origins in what I call the deep, dirty South, having been denied entrance into a store because of the color of my skin, being denied opportunities, having lived it, having seen it, really propels me to do this work every day.
Well, thank you, Val. What a great story. I'm going to kind of tie I've been taking notes. So I'm going to try to tie this all in after we hear from Clinton.
Well, first of all, Vincent, thank you very much, and Webster University for the opportunity to join such an illustrious panel around this topic. I think it's necessary and certainly fruitful, can be fruitful for those of us who are in the room. I believe that even as we deliver experiences, we're always lifelong learners, so we're always learning as well from others. And I think that is paramount to all of our success. And I concur with my colleagues with regard to those pivotal moments, those transformational moments that led me into this work. I too started as a child realizing the inequities relative to circumstance. And for me, it was around athletics, because I always, loved athletics immensely. I'm a twin, youngest of 5, and we all played athletics, and we all earned college degree scholarships based on our athleticism. However, when I was a child at around 9, 10 years old, my dad was a recreation center director for 30 years, one of 2 in the city of Wichita, and the only one who was leading a largely Black, in fact, predominantly Black recreation center, McAdams Recreation Center. And we were very good in the sports. They had this big sports fair all the time, every year. And we always won the gold ribbons, so to speak. And to watch the power brokers manipulate systems to try and reduce our ability to be successful, to move my twin brother and I into separate positions, which are outside of our expertise, so that we wouldn't win, was to me kind of dehumanizing. And to see my father anguish over those things and fight the system in a way led me to believe that, we have to have allies in life. It's important for all of us to have opportunity and access. And that is paramount to success. And we can't get that if there are no allies. And allies don't have to always look like us. I want to make sure that that's real clear as well. We are talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And throughout my journey, I've been an athlete in college. I've been a basketball coach, football coach in high school. I've been a basketball coach in college, and I started my work in student affairs. That's where I cut my teeth in higher education, early 2000s. And I got there by way of a gentleman, a white man, who recognized something in me I didn't know I had. And that gave me the opportunity in this platform to start being that person who wants to lift as I climb and be in a position where I could do that very thing. So I think that, having and recognizing the importance of allyship, recognizing the circumstances by which we get to where we are, and creating access and opportunities for others has also been in my DNA, like my colleagues. But in this space where I am now, it's kind of where all things are aligned. I get to do it from the 60,000-foot view in influencing policy, because much of what I was doing before as a change agent was process and procedure. Not that you can always change procedure, but to transform infrastructure, you have to do it through policy. And I get to work in that space now. And that's what, like Val said, I probably would do this work if I were not paid. Don't tell my boss that, but it is. The reward is seeing all these young people succeed, and moreover, seeing them take on the values of lifting as they climb, and continuing to create opportunity, access, and also finding their voice, and being given the opportunity and the courage to express themselves authentically. So I am grateful for all the opportunities I've had. I've come a long way. I've got an eclectic background, but it has created an opportunity for me to be in front of you and in this space now. So I'm very appreciative.
I'm appreciative of that road that has led you here, so that you can share this level of expertise with us tonight, but certainly the work that the impact that you all are making within your respective spaces. It's interesting listening to these stories, right? So even for me as Chief Diversity Officer at the university, I too, Angela, when you were talking about, your coming out experiences and the idea of like holding that back and repressing it at one point in time. I too did that as an educator. I was a teacher for years, and it was finally when I took on a job, or was applying for the job before this one. And I went in, as you said, wearing the flag, right? Like, we are clear that I'm Black, right? But I also want you to know that I'm gay, because I've also been in situations where, and when that bit of my identity was revealed, the work changed. The tone changed, the relationships changed. And so I said, moving forward, if I can't show up fully as myself, how can I also then advocate for others if I can't be my most authentic self, right? And so for me, that was, you know, in terms of how I frame and shape the work that I do now, it's about me embracing myself. But I too, like each of you, you know, think back to my childhood and think, you know, for me, it was my cousin who was a part of the St. Louis City public school system. And my mom sent me to a Catholic school. And I remember helping my cousin with homework and she was struggling, right? And for me, and we were about the same age, right? And so for me, it was clear that there was some inequities even in education and how the educational systems worked, that I think for me just kind of hooked me into this. And you know, Desiree, you talked about being a social, you know, this idea of not wanting to be a social worker, right? Well, I do have my MSW, as does Val. For me, I also find that I think we go into these fields because we want to correct or fix an experience that we had that didn't fit right, feel right, and to ensure that others also don't have to experience that. Let's take some time to define the terms diversity, equity, and inclusion. You know, we speak of it often, we say it, it's what we do, but I don't know that our entire audience necessarily knows that. So what's the difference between them? How about you go, Clinton?
Oh, I'm happy to go. You know, everyone brings their own perspective to really any term, any terminology. And how we try and frame diversity from a university standpoint is just what you said, is the authentic appreciation and understanding of difference, and valuing that differences is how we focus on the idea of diversity. But in order to be diverse, you have to have equity, because equity is all about what we all have talked about, is access and opportunity. You know, all of us in this field have seen the caricature equal and versus equity relative to access. And in order to have equity and diversity, you have to be inclusive. It was mentioned before, diversity is reflective of all differences, not just color. And if you don't include all those who are there, then are you truly working towards a diverse outcome? You know, it's often been said that if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And that's true. So if we don't have folks who differ from us around the table, then our outcomes are not going to be as rich as they could be. And I think that what allies do, what people in our spaces do as change agents, is we try and identify those folks who are not around the table. And we ask questions, why? Those are uncomfortable questions, but they also create opportunities. So you have to have one in order to achieve the other. And it is a long game, not a short game.
Thank you. Desiree, what are your thoughts?
Well, Clint, I don't want to be on the menu. So I think we need lots of folks. So I'll tag on to the inclusion piece, because I think a lot of folks prioritize diversity, and rightfully so, which is really about numbers and representation. And it's, you know, ensuring that across all of those dimensions, be it race, ethnicity, gender expression, all of the things, right, that you have a diverse collection of people. But once you have those people, how do they feel? And so I think that's really inclusion. And I think folks may stop at, well, they're here, you know, we invited them to the meeting. And so I've been, you know, just sort of saying, but do they feel that they belong? So, you know, the topic that really is resonating with me at the moment is psychological safety, because we have environments that don't welcome people to fully express themselves. And, you know, Angie and, you know, Vincent, that's exactly what you just referenced, right? So I think it's important not only to have a diverse collection of people, not only to invite them to the meeting, but to give voice to the things that they are saying. And so that means that they will not, you know, face real retribution if they issue a credible challenge, or if they don't fit into the box that you name for them, that they won't be ostracized. So I remember early on in my corporate career, someone came to me and they were like, you know, we just need to have a conversation with you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened? And they were like, well, starting to question your professionalism. And I was like, was it something I said? Was it, something at the meeting? Did my presentation, was it off? And they were like, no, your cell phone case is blinged out. And it was like, so that's an environment where a small thing, right? A small thing made somebody question my competency, made somebody question my ability to produce. And that's an environment where I think people aren't able to fully show up. And the thing is it's not just like, oh man, that sucks. Actually, you're squashing innovation, right? If people don't feel empowered to bring their full self, to express themselves and to, advocate for a different position, you're never going to get the best ideas. And so I really think it's important to prioritize belonging as we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion.
Thank you. Did either Val or Angie, did you want to get in on that at all?
No, I think they did a phenomenal job.
No, great. Well, how about one of the two of you start off with taking this question for us, which is this whole idea of the United States recently passed, or I'm sorry, that's not right. They didn't recently pass, it's been a while. The United States passed the Equal Employment Opportunities Act in 1965, yet the challenges of diversity in the workforce still exist. What have we gained and what have been the challenges to successfully creating a more diverse and equitable work environment? Val?
Wow, that's a great question. And I will say that many things have stayed the same and many things have changed. So to the previous question, I think more people have been included, but I still think we have many miles to go before we sleep to really create the equity piece. And I don't even really talk about diversity anymore because we all can look at each other and know that we are different. Desiree and I are both Black women, and that's an assumption. But for the most part, we are different. We've had different experiences. We've had different exposures. So when I'm not so much about talking about what we don't have, because we've been talking about that for a long time. But what I think some of the gains have been, even though I think we're at a very pivotal part in our journey, being between this race pandemic and this health pandemic, is that we still don't have enough Black and brown kids studying in the STEM field. We still don't have enough Black and brown people sitting in the C-suites, and especially those that are consumer based. So where we're spending billions of dollars a year, we still are not being included or have any equity around decisions that are being made. Those things being said, there are more of us in roles that we can influence change. So with the onsurgence of the recognition of the race pandemic, which has been going on for years and years and years, everybody wants a chief DE&I person, even though they think they're going to solve all the problems for them, but they really aren't. But at the end of the day, it has brought a level of awareness that had been dormant for years and years and years. So I think that is progression, but not nearly what we need to move forward. I've been phenomenally blessed. I am very thankful that I've had people to mentor me, coach me, sponsor me, and the corporate environments I've worked in prior to this. But that's where all that equity has to come in. I've been fortunate, but there are a whole bunch of people who are probably a whole lot brighter than I ever was that don't get those same opportunities. So we got a long way to go. Long way to go.
What's the correlation?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead, Vincent. I apologize. Go ahead.
No. I just wanted to ask Val a quick question about the correlation between Black and Brown students in STEM and this pandemic. What's that correlation that you're making there?
So the correlation that I'm making, they're not there. We still do not have Black and Brown kids studying in the STEM fields to the rate that we need to fill the nursing. You know, you hear everybody talking about in the health pandemic, we got nursing shortage, we got doctor shortage, we got scientist shortage, you know, people making the vaccine. That's a whole nother webinar. Then all of that. And that's because it's such a huge sea that we're swimming in. It goes back to education. If you don't know better, you don't do better. If you don't have the skills, that's where we talk about the equity. If you don't have the resources, St. Louis Public Schools don't have the same resources as Ladue. We know that for a fact. No offense to anybody that went to either one of those systems. But that's where your people are being trained and exposed. That's where they learn about, oh, I can work at NGA. I understand some of the careers and what they're doing there. So the correlation is, this is a cradle to grave issue. It is not just a concentrated issue in one area or another. Because even when it comes to business, you know, when I worked in the telecommunications industry, when I did, most of the Black and Brown people worked on what we call the boards. They worked in operator services. It was when I went into that system did the talent begin to move through the system and reach levels of positions that were unheard of. But that's where, you know, if you don't know better, you won't do better. So I hope that answered that, Vincent.
Yeah, it did. And I think it's also this idea of creating a pipeline, right? And we've talked about that on a previous show of ours. And do you want to say something? I'm sorry for cutting.
Oh, no, Vincent. I was just, the challenges are real. Val brings up some, you know, there's more challenges. I agree that there's more challenges than what has actually the successes that we've had. I feel like where there's a real opportunity is when it comes to like this shared accountability piece. Very much so what Val said, and I'll take the CDO title any day, Val, but it's this shared accountability, because it isn't the CDO of your organization that is going to be able to impact the changes that you want to see your organization take. And now we're in a time where people are listening, but it's like getting that area of everyone taking accountability and understanding that everyone has a role to play in this. No matter where you are in an organization or within the community, you have a role to play for progress, right? To be able to combat these challenges that we have, to be able to combat the inequities in education that we see, and to Val's point about, you know, STEM education and the disparities between, you know, the various school districts depending on that zip code, right? I go back to Amy Hunter's lucky zip codes when I think about that, because it really defines like that's where it's all starting. but we as organizations, we as educators, we as chief diversity officers have a significant role to play in this time to be able to identify what our role is and to be able to root out the systems that were put into place. None of us put these systems into place, right? But it's our responsibility to break those systems down and to take that piece and own it and do our piece, because if we all do that, I really feel like we could make incredible change within within this, our communities, within our workforce. We'll be able to get the, be able to draw that talent and be able to create, jobs in our area and within our city, and all of that starts to work together. But I can't agree more, Val. The disparities in education and the inequities within education has never been more visible and obvious than what they have and what COVID has brought out. And the new reports are just coming out. I believe Diversity just did an article on this, and the studies are showing that we have we have children that are in our poor school districts that are slipping back in reading and education, and we cannot allow that. And again, we cannot do this. Is up to us. This isn't up to our government. This is up to us. We need to, we can take this piece, as members and strong members of the community, and we can take a hold of this piece and own a piece of it and make sure we can just make a little change, what that rippling effect would be.
I saw that.
Follow on, if I could, as we're talking about being diversity practitioners in the workplace. We have to, have those diverse pipelines, but you've got to have people in positions that can make the decision and act on the decision and are willing to do it for all the right reasons. And I will use myself as an example. As being a senior leader in an organization, I get to make hiring decisions. So with that, the people on my team, yes, they do look like me. If I was not in that position, it's highly likely they would not be looking like me. And if you don't have people that look like you in those positions of power, influence, and authority within these systems that are sitting in the room when we're doing performance reviews, to be the person to speak up. I'll pick on Desiree because I know her, to say that, Desiree, yes, you got her down in this lower quadrant, but she should really be in the higher quadrant because of X, Y, and Z. Know that for a fact. I have sat in those rooms and continue to sit in those rooms. To be the person to speak for Desiree when she cannot speak for herself. So as we talk about this diversity in the workplace, those are the things that have to change. If the C-suite is not diverse and inclusive, there will not be equity. It's that simple. And if they have equity, it's perceived because you're picking people for all the wrong reasons and you're setting them up for failure. I've seen that happen too many times also.
Val, I just want to piggyback on something you said, because I think, there's this expectation that, we will go into our workplaces and they will change tomorrow. But you talk about having the will to make different changes. That may mean that you have to enact new policies. Everyone may not be comfortable, but if it's the right thing to do, it is going to produce results, and leaders are going to have to lean in. And I think that that's a hard truth that folks are realizing. And we would like to see different results, but it will also require different actions, different inputs, right? So I appreciated that.
I appreciate this conversation. I want to bring in some of our audience members. And so I'm going to ask Earl if you have some questions there.
Yes, I do. And this one's directed towards Mr. Clinton. In your opening statement, you said allies don't look like us, and they recognize something that I didn't know I had. And this person says, I need to know if you have issues with other Blacks because he recognizes that your allies don't necessarily need to look like us. I am a Black female law enforcement executive. I'm the first Black female in the 200-year history of the SLMPD to be promoted to lieutenant colonel. I get very sharp criticisms from my Black comrades because of my professional relationships with people who do not look like me. When you were speaking earlier, I feel like you were talking directly to me. Do you or have you experienced this?
Short answer, yes. First of all, kudos to you. Thank you for your service. One of my careers, as you see over my right shoulder, was law enforcement. So I have definitely experienced the target, so to speak, just by virtue of stature. And that's not necessarily based on stature relative to my position, power position. It could be stature in a game as to being a point guard or whatever the case might be. Yes, I have experienced shade, if you will, from other persons of color because of position. And I like to say, especially when I coach, Desiree mentioned something earlier that was profound with me because I see our work as coaching. When I coach young people in their spaces or along their growth trajectory, I often tell them, you're going to get shade. You have to take ownership of the umbrella. And the only way to control that is really do what you've done that has gotten you to where you are. You have to have confidence in the fact that you've earned the right to be there, and that though you may have had mentors along the way, try and maintain your grace and allow those folks the opportunity to actually come under your shade and learn more from you rather than sit on the outside poking at you. It's challenging. It's tough. It's tough to be a leader. It really is. But when you take on those leadership roles, you understand that you're going to have those difficult circumstances. And it's also more hurtful when it's from another person of color, if you're a person of color. If you're LGBTQ, it's difficult if it's from someone else in that demographic group. But we have to understand, difference is amongst us all. We're not homogenous no matter in what demographic group we identify. And it's important for us to really maintain our focus, maintain our self-confidence. Earlier, the panelists were talking about self-care. Self-care is valuable. Early in my work here in the diversity realm, I learned about NCORE National Conference on Race and Ethnicity, and also NADHE, National Association of Diversity Officers in Higher Education. And those spaces have been, for me, really heartfelt and eye-awakening. And they refresh me every year I go to those conferences, because I get to, like here, have conversation with other folks who are doing the work and overcoming the challenges and making those successes. But also think about this, and I'll close my comments here. You're a lieutenant colonel and the first in that department, Black female to be there. Think about all of those young people who are looking at you and thinking, I too can achieve this. So the shade is worth it. If you change one, if you create opportunity and access for one person, your work is done.
That's fantastic. Thank you. That shade, that was a fabulous answer and advice there. Earl, do you have another question?
Yes, I do. And that has to do with a conversation we were having a little earlier. Why is it in corporate America, the white majority appears to have fear, distrust, or hesitancy to see him or herself reporting to a person of color, as if there is some secret code to not be the person who reports to a non-white? For example, he or she is of Eastern, Indian, or Asian. How are you trying to change this perception?
I'll take it. And I'm sure there'll be some add-on. That goes back to slavery and the systems that were created 400 years ago. And it is difficult for people to deal with people that are different from them. And it is really, that is a great question, because the perceptions have been created over time. So Black people are to be the workers. They're not supposed to be the leaders. And then you bring in the other cultures, ethnicities. They're very similar stories to be told. Who built America? Black people and Native Americans. So we're supposed to work. We're supposed to put the systems together for people to have. The refrigerator was created by a Black man, and the comforts of life, but we're not supposed to lead in life. And that is a direct root of slavery and the systems that were created over time, started 400 years ago on the plantation. So why is there fear? Because folks know they haven't done the right thing. If you know your stories on slavery, you know, you had field Black people and you had house Black people. And the house Black people were the ones that grinded up the glass and the sugar and would give it to. So that's the fear, because they didn't think they had the intelligence to combat what was being done to them. So I know it wasn't a happy answer, but at the end of the day, you got to know your history. You got to know where you've been to know where you are, to know where you're going. So this fear thing really is the root of what happened in slavery. I see you, Desiree.
I want to pile on, because first of all, you said sugar, and it just took me back to my Southern roots. But, you know, the idea that you're expressing is found in a book I'm reading, Cast, by Isabel Wilkerson. And yes, it is so good. But she talks about the foundations of the founding of this country. And she talks about race and racial hierarchy around the globe, and the systems of racial hierarchy and all the things that it did to relegate one group to a certain posture, and the systems and policies and practices it did to elevate another group. And so those things have not all been broken down, right? And so, Angela, you said it earlier, we didn't create the system, but this is the system that we have. And so I just wanted to add on that part of, you know, this mindset, the perceptions, people's fear, misunderstanding can all be kind of traced back to the systems that we've built. Who has been in power, who has been given opportunities over time, who has not. And so, you know, if you think about, you know, the study where they asked children, you know, which one of these is the pilot? And they all, you know, sort of pointed to the male. Well, it's in of like, if you haven't seen it, then it doesn't compute for your brain. So I think that part of this is unlearning, and part of it is representation matters, right? And that's why you need to see people in positions of power so they can make decisions and influence change.
Anybody else want to add on that one? I'm curious, Desiree, you talked about books, and I have two final questions for us here. What are the books that you all are reading that really helps you go deeper in the work that you're doing? Is there, I know you just mentioned Cast, right? And I know that book, it's a fantastic book and it makes those connections, but are there other books out there right now that you all are reading that speaks to this work?
The Broken Heart of America by Walter Johnson tells you why St. Louis is the way it is.
Gotta add that one.
I base a lot of my work on when I learned and heard Dr. Damon Williams speak, who is the author of The Chief Diversity Officer and Strategic Diversity Leadership. And though I've read those books from cover to cover, I go back to those books often because they are fulfilling in helping me guide my approach relative to this work and building, the business case for diversity and attacking infrastructure. So those are my two mainstays. Hidden Biases is another one, and I just drew a blank on the other one else. And White Fragility is a very good book for you to read.
Vincent.
Yeah, I echo that, Clinton. White Fragility, and then also Waking Up White was a really it was a really good read and helped to, because again, I can't say something. I'm going to read this Broken Heart of America. Valerie, been kind of diving into a little bit of St. Louis history recently and really trying to get down to try to pull back all the layers of how we got to where we are today. And because I think it's fundamental in the work that we're doing, especially here in the community. And so it's like, helps to kind of, all this is, and Cast was something that, of course, been recommended as well. So, yeah.
I offer 2 videos. De jure segregation is about a 20-minute video, and it is specific to St. Louis to some degree, talking about race evolution, particularly in St. Louis and other large cities. And then the 3-part series, Race Matters. Each of those are available free on YouTube, and they are very enlightening.
Vincent, you mind if I make a shameless plug here?
Please do.
Okay, so one resource I want to say, Khan Academy. I know that they had like all of these, resources to teach you different things, but they also have some micro courses on diversity, on equity, on segregation in housing, on healthcare inequities. So, and they're like less than 5 minutes. So I would highly recommend, if you just, have a little bit of time, check out Khan Academy. But the other book that I'm reading is called More Than Enough. It's by Elaine Welteroth. And the reason I read that is because all of my other reading is heavy. So when we think about all of the systems and the policies, like it gets heavy. So More Than Enough is my light read. And the panelists, we were talking about, as you do this work, how do you replenish your soul? How do you stay in it? And how do you sort of re-energize yourself so you can, continue going in this marathon? Because it certainly is a marathon and not a sprint. So one of the things that has given me joy and has reinvigorated me in this process, and especially since June, I've been working on a women's empowerment experience, a virtual event for women. It is free. My favorite 4-letter word, FREE. It is free. And, and we're bringing artists and dynamic speakers all together. Check it out. Register today, queenwithinyou.com, queenwithinyou.com, free. Thank you. Shameless plug. Thank you, Vincent.
Thank you. We will list that among our resources.
You need it.
Yes, for sure.
Hard work.
That's a good question, right? So this work that we do is heavy. It is incredibly heavy. If we think about George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, all the, the racial reckoning that's taken place and that we've had to lead within our organizations, on top of the pandemic, on top of like your own personal life, plus then having to show up to lead your colleagues and your organizations. What do you do to take care of yourselves?
Tell us about your essential oils, Angela.
Essential oils. And I actually visualize wringing out the sponge, because you take all this stuff in. So I visualize just wringing that sponge out and letting it go, and just try to re-energize myself, because if I'm not showing up as my best self every single day, I'm no help to anyone. And anything that I can do today to make tomorrow just a little bit better for somebody is so important. And if I can't, I have to show up with, energy and compassion and love and understanding, and this is how I do it, is to, just take it, meditate, do whatever mindfulness works for you. But you have to find joy. Even on the really hard days, you have to do something for yourself, so that you can come back tomorrow and keep up the work.
Love that. And it's that the maintaining hope that things can get better and will get better. I have 2 little girls, so I shut off. I don't watch news. I shut off my phone, and we play and we giggle. And I find beauty, in their laughter. But you got to find things that keep you well here.
For me, it's all about, I'm back to writing. So I write. And shameless plug, if you want to see some of those writings, www.stuffvalsaid.com. And so the blogs allow me to express myself, really taking in God's wonders. So being at home and being able to watch nature do what it does has been good. Of course, exercising, being really mindful about what I eat. That all of those things kind of help me take away. And I do shut off my device at 8 o'clock and will not look at it again generally until about 5 o'clock in the morning.
Well, I concur, couldn't agree more with all that has been mentioned. I must admit, I don't shut my device off. I'm open 24/7, which is probably a problem. But I find time throughout the day to laugh and enjoy my surroundings. There's always good. And we have to reach out intentionally to find that. Get away from the office for a moment. Go for a walk. My wife and I go on walks every evening, but do things that make you feel good. Interact with people whom you have a tremendous amount of trust in, and find that joy. Find a reason to laugh and have fun. This work is tough, true, but it doesn't mean it can't be fun. Also, there can't be any enjoyment beyond the enjoyment of watching others grow. I mean, the enjoyment of commiserating with those, even those whom you have challenges with, is really heartwarming. And I get that. I have those experiences all the time. So I try and find the best part of the places that I'm in, even during the tough times.
I can't believe it. The time has gone by. Val, your phone should be going off in a couple of minutes because we have approached that 8 o'clock hour. But before we bring up, I want to thank you all again. Before we bring up our Chancellor Strobel and our President Schuster, again, thank you all so very much. What a fantastic conversation. We could have gone on with additional questions, but I also want to just be mindful of time. And I want to say that if you are enjoying the virtual series, check out the Webster World Report podcast, a special program connecting voices across Webster during the pandemic. The 17th edition will air on December 11th and will feature Alexandria McEwen, Webster's Alumni Association Chair. She will discuss her experiences with diversity and inclusion issues in the tech sector. And a representative of Webster's operations in China will discuss how their programs are doing in this challenging year. The Webster World Report is available on YouTube, iTunes, and SoundCloud. For more information on the podcast, visit webster.edu. And we have with us now Chancellor Strobel and President Schuster. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're privileged to both get to join this great group tonight. And as you participated, panel, thank you. Thank you to each one of you. And you can understand how fortunate Julian and I are to get to work with Vincent and Earl at Webster University.
Thank you.
This is hard work. And leadership is lonely work. And part of how you offset that and keep the joy going and the optimism and be a creator of hope is to have allies who are leaders who share your same values. And so I trust and hope that you are that for each other. And I certainly know that Julian and I have that with the colleagues who are part of this panel and have been through this many weeks. It is one of the blessings of this past 9 months is the creation of Webster Speaks. I look forward to it every other week when it happens. And tonight's been exceptional. Thank you. And I think as I listen to you, I just want to give a couple of observations that as I think about issues of racial reckoning and justice, history matters, place matters, and who we are matters. Each one of you started off by talking about your life experiences and whether it was part of your family's life experience or whether you came into it yourself and how you found your voice and the right leverage point and how you began to focus on others. And I think one of the challenges of leadership is you have to want things to get better. You have to be in a position where you can make things better, so it can cause you to focus on yourself. But the best good is to use that for the benefit of others. And every one of you talked about that. So I thank you for the inspiration and the courage that you've given us tonight, those of us in the audience, that wish to be allies, wish to be co-champions, and want to achieve the kinds of goals that are so important to you and should be to all of us. So I just want to say thank you. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Chancellor Strobel.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Desiree, I am the person who said that Vincent has the PhD, and I really meant it. Because whenever I listened to him, I said, "How do you do that? You know, you are so at home and eloquent, and it's just amazing."
Awesome.
Of course, you know, I'm envious and I'm jealous, you know, but that's another story. So So what I know that it's late, and I know that this topic is very important to be finished by the small talk. So besides profusely thanking you for what you do and what you did tonight, this evening, I would like to share 1.5 story with you. And one story is relating to the Val's comment about hiring and promoting and building the team and changing the landscape and the environment in which we work and we operate. So once, you know, I wouldn't say that I wanted to be a university president. I wanted to be a professor. But when I moved into the administration, I thought, you know, that I can do the job of a president. But then, as many of you, I also hit the glass ceiling. And Val, you would relate to that, because somebody told me, headhunter, you know those board members they choose people who look like them, who behave like them, who talk like them. And just imagine how many people, I wouldn't say look like me, but certainly very few of them talk like me, and Beth knows very, very few think like me. So where I'm headed with this, now I'm a president, but why I'm a president? Because I found Beth, or Beth found me, and Beth convinced those board members that the difference is for the benefit of the university and benefit of the students and benefit for the broader community. So finding, and as you can see, I don't know what you see similar between Beth and me, but there is an essential similarity. We think alike. And while we differ in our thinking, we think alike about the most important things which we confront. So finding somebody in your life who will understand, who will not necessarily be like you, but who will understand who you were, who you are, and who you want to be, it's extremely important.
Mm.
So the other half of the story is Vincent knows. I always say, but hey, it's not that bad, you know. I mean, look at me, you know, I will support this because I try to, I wouldn't say, some people would think relativizing, and that's not true. I try in my, I would say, Eastern European, you know, gloom and doom. I always try to see, you know, the North Star, which is going to guide us where we want to go and where we want to be. But here is the story in which I completely relate to something which you were elaborating today. I am not going to mention the time. Time is 20th century. Actually, it's not. It's 21st century. I'm not going to mention the place. Place is this continent. And I was a finalist in one college in the Deep South, Desiree, for the dean's position. And vice president of that college was a black man, and the president was a black person. The chair of the department who was interviewing me looked at me in the hotel over the breakfast and says, Dr. Schuster, have you ever worked for a black man? And I was shocked how anybody can ask me the question like that. And what you did tonight, I relived that story. And there is a comma. This is not the end of the story. And on the other occasion, I will send the other part of the sentence. But that is the reality in which we are living. And to enhance that reality, somebody mentioned, I think, white fragility, right? More than one person here. The name of the author escapes me, but I think it's she, right?
Yes.
She and her counterpart, who is black, went to University of Wisconsin, I presume medicine. And I just reposted that on LinkedIn. I usually do not do that because I'm not very savvy with the social media. Beth knows that, right? But I reposted it because I was listening to what you are talking and then finding the proof of it. I told you one proof from my past, and then I found another proof from present. Those two people who were presenting at the University of Medicine, one of them was paid 70% higher honorarium than the other one. Wow. Let us guess.
Wow.
Let us guess who got 70% more.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, again, the ugly reality. And the conversation as such need to dispel both things. Need to dispel that gradually we are going to climb to 69%. I don't believe in that. But they also need to convey the following message, and I will end up with that. In order to get to that 70% equalizer, we all need to open ourselves to all of the people who are willing, able to help us, to fight the fight, because it is not your fight, it is our fight. Mm-hmm. It is fight of all of the people who fight injustice. It is fight of all of the people who fight inequity. And I assure you that both Beth, myself, Vincent, Earl are more than allies. We are comrades in this battle. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And our place is your place in order to fight for this 70%. Mm-hmm. So I wish you all the best in everything what you do. Mm-hmm. Some of you are close here, some of you are close by what you do, and some of you are close by where you came from. Earl and I didn't know until 2 days ago that we share a lot of things. His family actually shares a lot of things in common with me. Desiree from the Deep South, I believe that this story applies to the state you came from or you are from, which I said, you know. And with the 80s Still University, you know, this is another university. And I look forward, you know, seeing you at Webster and working with you. I'm not going to mention a lot about Angela and Val because they are, excuse me, locals, you know. We can see each other whenever we want, despite the COVID, and we will. And we will, thanks to the hard work of Vincent and his team. So thank you so much. It was a longer than 1.5 story, but as I always start talking, you know, it is important to express yourself. Without expressing yourself, as Angela was saying in the very beginning, we are going to miss an important part of us. So thank you for helping me to find another part of the long forgotten or put back story or stories in my personal experiences. So thank you, and let us pursue this 70% together.
Thank you, President Schuster, Chancellor Strobel. Again, I want to thank our guests. Webster Speaks will be back December 16th when we talk about the 2020 reflections and the road ahead with a panel of guests from our previous episodes. This episode will be a special one for us in that we will extend it to 90 minutes. As you see, we have a lot to talk about, and as we reflect on 2020, there will be even more need for time. Registration for this program will open tomorrow on our page, which you can find at www.webster.edu/Webster Speaks. Again, to my panel, thank you so very much. I look forward to our continued work and partnership in this. Angela, the consortium is fantastic, and I'm so glad and grateful for you for forming that and providing a space for DEI folks to gather. So thank you. Earl, thanks as always, and good night, and we'll see you soon.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye, everybody.